Okay, I know how much you love to talk, but we do have a speaker right now, and one of the most amazing farmers that I know. I have enjoyed every time I've gone to visit with your farm and see you at the farmer's market. You always have such beautiful flowers and produce. So tell us about your farm.
All right, my name is Megan Schultze. I am the owner of Frontieress Farm. I'm here in Fairbanks. I grow on a little less than an acre and a half. Oh, can you hear me now? No? Here? All right. So I grow on about an acre and a half, a little less than an acre and a half. I am a really big advocate for small farming here. I think, we just did all these farmer presentations and a lot of us are small scale. And I really wanted to give voice to the people that are trying to make careers out of this and just to kind of give insight to some of our challenges and some of the strategies that I'm using on my farm to overcome some of those strategies or some of those challenges. I'm a little nervous. All right. Some motivations for being small, being organic, and being diverse is number one, you don't need a large piece of land. And this is, much easier to find here in Fairbanks. You're less reliant on big equipment, which could make it much more cost effective. You're not spending a lot of money on maintenance. You're not using a lot of fossil fuels. Your labor costs can be kept low if you're keeping it too small. And I just believe it's a more sustainable form of agriculture. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Okay, so there's a really big push in the market garden community to be very transparent about numbers. And I really wanted to share that because I think it's important that we know the reality of what it is to be farming a for-profit farm here in Fairbanks. And one of the leaders of this market garden movement is Jean-Martin Fortier. I follow him. I think you should read his books if you are, wanting to go this route for small diversified farming. And he says that if you can bring in 60 to 100,000 per acre annually in diverse vegetable crops. And I believe this is true. I see it on my farm. I know it from other farmers. So just 1 acre, you can be bringing up to $100,000. That being said, that is your gross profit, okay? You really need to consider your high startup costs, your land, your infrastructure, your tools. You also need to consider all of your annual costs. So your supplies, your potting soil, your seeds, your labor. And then also all of this cost compared to a really short growing season makes it pretty low profit margins, especially for your beginning in those early years. So year 5, so I'm going on year 7, and I'm not a veteran to this. Like I'm still like very much in the midst of like what it takes to make this very successful. And so just to be clear, like up to year 5, it was a 20% profit margin. That's really not sustainable for the long term. But, as those high startup costs are getting lower, your profit margins are starting to going up, as you are becoming more efficient with your crops, your profits are also going to go up. So year 6, that was last year, we were doing about 28%. And this year, we're making a real push for doing 35%, which I actually think is getting quite good and pretty practical for a farmer. We're not gonna be, we're not in this, I think, to be big money makers, but I do think that we can have like a successful career and a livable income off this farm. So some strategies. Oh,
Okay, I got it.
So some strategies that I use on my farm and some of my peers use as well is a bio-intensive approach. So in its most basic form, it just means that you're trying to make the maximum yield on your small space. So you're also doing that with an intention of, sustaining your soil fertility and increasing your biodiversity. So first and foremost, I use really intense spacing and standardized beds. I use a 30-inch bed and my pathways are super tight, they're 12 inches. This goes for most of my farm, just because this makes planning my farm a lot easier. It takes my implements, like having that standard bed takes all my implements. And then, the 12-inch pathways, it's totally doable when your plants get a little higher. It's pretty tight, but it's very doable. And then you really do have a potential for 100 beds per acre. That's really tight spacing, like really, really tight. I don't have 100 beds per acre. It would be like, from end to end, but just so you know, that's like this great potential that you could have for that space. We are minimum till, we use natural amendments and fertilizers, compost, crop rotation, cover cropping. These are all ways to keep the integrity of your soil and to jumpstart the season. If you're not bringing in a big tractor at the beginning of the season and you have those standardized beds already in place, you have a jumpstart to just getting in and getting all of your transplants, getting all your seeds in on time, which I know if we have such a short season, if we have such a short season, it just really gives us that jump start. We're not relying on large equipment, and if you're building your soil and you're keeping your natural habitat, it just makes a better space for your plants, and it really does make you more productive as a farmer. It gives you better yields. It makes you more profit. Some other things that we concentrate on is high value crops, making sure to keep our expenses low and have diverse markets. And I'm going to go into those quite thoroughly. So for me, concentrating on high value, diverse crops is really, really my business. So, I started with flowers, and that's what a lot of you know me as, and that was my very first year, because I knew that having flowers was a crop that I could harvest multiple times throughout that season, as well as diversifying my markets with that crop. And they have really pulled me through my business. And another crop that you can harvest other crops you can harvest multiple times that are also very high value are tomatoes. We grow them in a tunnel. That's the most productive. Leafy greens, kale, salad mix, Asian greens. You wouldn't think that these are high value, but because they are incredibly fast, that makes them actually quite valuable. And basil, we love growing basil. Other high value crops, quick crops. So turnips, radishes, salad greens, lettuce. So a lot of market gardeners in the lower 48, their bread and butter is having succession planting. So, you know, some of these farms, they have 12 months of the year that they can grow. We have a very short season, but in my experience, you can succession plant maybe 3 times. And I would say turnips, radishes, and salad greens for sure are really good at that. And so if you have 100 feet of growing space and you succession plant that 3 times, meaning if you put your radishes in, harvest your radishes, put another crop of radishes in, harvest those, put another one in, you can, that 100 feet becomes 300 feet, and that is gonna just increase your yield that much. I pay attention to market demand. Fairbanks is incredibly, carrot crazy, and our carrots go really, really fast at market, and flowers as well. And so we go really hard with these. That being said, they're incredibly labor intensive. So I think when you're deciding on what to grow, you really have to weigh the value of that crop with your time and how that equals out in your planning. Another thing is niche crops, value-added specialty and storage crops. So, you know, I think because our season is so short that we really, what I like to do is cast a really wide net. And so, you know, flowers are something that I've really worked hard to make a very, make it my business to do a really good job. And I think people like really identify with that and value that. Microgreens and tulips are something that I've been working hard to extend our season so we can start making money maybe when the field is still being planted. Ginger is something I've been working on the past couple of years, and last year we were able to get a really good harvest from it, and it's incredibly high value, and everyone at market was very stoked about it. So storage crops are also an excellent season extension, and there is so much want and need for them, and I think that's something to really lean into as well. I would highly suggest anyone who does a small farm to diversify your markets. So we do a CSA, and we just do a flower CSA, and it really does bring in, you know, money early in the season when we are not making anything, so we can buy all of our seeds and all of our potting soil and all the things. But I would say everyone every year asks us if we're doing a veggie CSA, and I don't. I don't because the farmer's market is amazing, and I can really bring anything and everything I grow to the farmer's market. I go twice a week to the Tanana Valley Farmers Market, and our sales are really excellent. And I do highly suggest that anybody who has anything that they were wanting to sell, they could sell there. I think, and there's really high demand. There are other markets, other amazing farmers markets in the city. There's the South Side Market, there's the Goldstream Market, there's other markets that are really just very supportive. And if you want to even if you're a homesteader, not even, but like anybody who has produce, people are really hungry for it, and I think farmers markets are an excellent venue for selling your produce or whatever you're selling. Wholesale and restaurants, we work with a lot of business owners throughout Fairbanks. So the roaming route and the co-op are incredibly supportive of my business. I also work with a couple of breweries in town. Um, value-added events, shoulder season, food hubs, online ordering, just really start thinking about ways to sell your product, ways to make money off of what you have. It's, it's out there. I just think, having a clear vision of where your product is going is really essential, because you don't want to put all this work and money into growing it and not know where it's actually going to go or how you're going to make money. We do a lot of dried flowers, and so in that way we can get into winter bazaars. And I do a lot of wedding and DIY buckets throughout the season. So those are just ways to just be creative and make some money. You really want to keep your costs low. This is really essential, and it can be incredibly hard. So I would say some essential startup tools. Obviously, you're going to need some sort of seed starting equipment or some sort of seeder, and we're still talking about small scale. And so I suggest transplants because they help you jumpstart the season, but in that way, if you're gonna do transplants, you have to think about having some sort of greenhouse or propagation house or grow light setup, so that's all kind of connected. I use wind strip trays and a yang seeder. I think those have been really game changer for my own farm. For greenhouse, propagation house grow lights, I think you really need to do research and pick your battle. In the beginning, I did it all under grow lights in a friend's basement, and it totally worked. I don't think that it makes the healthiest plants. So I do suggest some sort of greenhouse or propagation house, and I think there's some amazing resources here in Fairbanks, great farmers that have really cool ideas for propagation houses that are built into hillsides to retain that heat, or there's a lot of different ideas, and I would say if I could do it differently, I would, but I pretty much, I went with a pretty simple greenhouse, and that's what I use today, and that's what I'm probably gonna stick with until I make more money. So that being said, my greenhouse was relatively cheap to start. I built it using Johnny's their directions on Johnny Selected Seeds. If you guys, that's where I buy a lot of my seeds. They have free shipping if your seed order is over $200, it's free shipping. So that's really important to me. They have also these great directions to make your own hoop houses. So my greenhouse hoop house is, it's a 12 by 40. It's only 8 feet tall, but in that way, because it's not super high, it's actually not crazy to heat. It's double plastic. I have a blower fan in there to insulate, like blow air to just insulate it just a couple of degrees. I was off grid for a while, and it is possible to have those blower fans off grid. And if you send me an email, I can give you some information about that. When you're making your hoop houses, you really need to just remember that you're buying, you gotta heat it. You have to, having a frost alarm is very helpful. Exhaust fans, so just remember that there's all these extra costs to that. Fencing, I use electric fence with metal T-posts. It's not super fancy, but I think it totally works. I have seen moose get zapped by it and then they run off, so I do know that it can be quite effective. The disadvantages are that, even after 6 years, I've had to buy a new battery. So And those are they're like $150 or something, so just keep that in mind, but fencing can be really expensive in other ways, so this is just another way to keep those costs low. Some essential tools from my own perspective, I'm pretty minimal. I just do shovel, rake, broad forks are really excellent, wheelbarrows. Just pretty much your bare essentials. And it works. Like, you don't have to have fancy equipment to be productive. I will say that renay or some sort of cloth is really helpful for direct seeding because it keeps that moisture and keeps those seeds germinating, not getting dry. I use a fair amount of landscape fabric, so I don't use the mulch that, you can only get 1 year out of. My landscape fabric has lasted about 6 years. Every year I buy a little bit more, but I have the weediest farm in the universe and it's been really, really effective. If you're a flower farmer, Fortinova netting is really important. You can also use that for trellising peas. But I like to give my customers who buy my bouquets nice straight stems and nothing that's been blown over by the wind or hammered by the rain. And so Fortinova netting is on almost all my flowers. Lawnmower, weed whacker. And for irrigation, I do drip for all my transplants. And I do overhead watering with wobblers for anything that's direct seeded. Okay. Oh, it's not. Not essential, but pretty handy, and I can't imagine going back on it, is my BCS walk behind tractor. This is a very easy to use, very versatile machine. They cost about it's about 12,000 if you're gonna get an implement on the back. But these help me, I don't have a huge crew, it's me and a couple others, so being able to do quick tills on my bed, really shallow tilling, but just have a nice seed bed. The walk behind tractor is really excellent. Having a walking cooler is essential to my business. It lets me harvest things at different times and keep them for market over many, over like many days, and it really just gives us a nice big open window for that. And then I do hoop house and caterpillar tunnels. So those hoop houses from Johnny's, I actually have a couple of them. I grow, heat loving crops in there. The ginger really loved it. This one is a little larger than my others, and this I built last spring, and it's for my tomatoes. It's also not as large as a high tunnel, like your traditional high tunnel. But if you do a leaning system with your tomatoes, it totally works. Another thing is, for years I didn't have a wash or pack station. And, last year I was able to build one, and I just used a table and hose for many years, totally fine. But it's just really a game changer. I have a converted washing machine for quick greens, which I know Goosefoot also uses, and it really just helps make things very efficient and fast. So my startup costs, and this is without land, was, over a couple of years was about 40 to 50,000. Annual costs, so seeds, bulbs, potting soil, amendments, infrastructure projects like my hoop house and washing station, my utilities, can't forget your utilities when you're doing annual costs, packaging, advertising, office expenses. There's so many expenses into making a very productive farm. is about 40 to 50,000 as well. All right. Talk about land. Okay, so my first years, I was on leased land. It's about, I grow a little bit more than half an acre there. And I've been there, like, I'm still on there. Some of the advantages of this space is that, there was minimal startup. I didn't have to fence it. Well, I helped with putting up the fence, but I actually don't own that fence. The land is like, has been used as a farm since the 70s, and so that soil is actually really great, and it's super, like, the organic matter is, like, everything is good to go. It makes my production, yeah, just great yields and great production there. And it's also close to town. Some of the disadvantages are there's no infrastructure. I'm not personally on site every evening to monitor if, like, anything's gone wrong and, you know, did a hose break and there's like big, you know, irrigation spills everywhere, or, you know, a moose trying to get in. Also some disadvantages are that, you know, the landowners move, your lease is terminated, or there's other drama. So my owners are amazing. Brian and Michelle Charlton, I'll just give them a shout out. We love them. Okay, so after my second year, I did buy property off Cripple Creek, and since then, I've been working to clear it very slowly. I did a cover crop on there, but I didn't irrigate it, so maybe it wasn't super great. I've been building infrastructure on it, as well as my own home. And last year was the first year I put it into production, and it's about an acre of growing space. So you can really see the differences with production on starting a farm from scratch, from really clearing that land and, you know, mineral soil, to the farm that I use in off of Pearl Creek. It's just really different. The production is much lower, and it's going to take some years to really build that up. So some of the advantages of owning and, you know, starting my own property is I have lasting and personal infrastructure. It's infrastructure that I've picked that is useful to how I run my farm. I have autonomy over every decision there. And then, you know, while we might not be making a huge profit margin, you know, making, you know, a lot of money every year, I am building asset through this property. And I think that's really important. Some of the disadvantages are that it's a high startup cost. I took an FSA loan, and that it takes a really long time. Okay, so wage really quick. I have an employee, I pay them 17 an hour. It really adds up to a lot. So you gotta choose if you can do this yourself, or if you're gonna grow to a size that you need to take on an employee. I started doing a work share program last year, so I have some people that come to my farm, and they do 3 hours of labor, and I give them a vegetable CSA in exchange. And I'm really excited about possibilities for this farmer trainer program. You know, like the possibility for cost share labor through your AFID. Make sure to keep your efficiency high. I do so much planning in the off season. I know exactly what's going where, which might not totally happen, but I know how much I'm gonna plant. I know where it's gonna go. And that way I can really make my seed order like fit that. So I have seed schedules, I have direct seed schedules, I have harvest schedules, I have like intense budgeting. I know about how much yield is gonna come out of that space and exactly where it's gonna go. Keep on top of your weeds. It's a little easier said than done, but things like weed mats and flame weeding and covering with plastic until you plant is helpful. Master your crops, and I'm still working on this, but I read and try and learn from my peers, and sometimes it's just trial and error. Some helpful programs, so I'm just gonna give a shout out for the SNAP, WIC, and the LFP program. Sorry, the acronym is wrong. These are incredible programs, and I benefit from them. I think the people that use them also greatly benefit from them as well. And I really, there's a little bit of a freeze or the uncertainty of these programs going forward. And I would just like anybody who's involved with that, for advocacy for those programs to know that these programs are really essential to our business. And I think that they're really essential to our community. I think if you're a new farmer, the Beginning and Young Farmers Network is excellent. They're really cool people and you can really learn a lot. I've gotten quite a lot of help from the FSA through operation and microloans. And they also have grant programs. And I'd like to give a shout out to the Alaska Rural Rehabilitation Fund. They're totally on it. And I think I'm out of time, so I'll just
Yeah.
use that.
Sorry.
and We're done. Okay, thank you.